Montana Territory, July 1883. The wagon will gave out 10 miles east of Sleep River, and that was how Tamsyn Johans found herself standing in the middle of a sun-scorched dirt road, hands on her hips, staring at the busted axle like it had personally betrayed her. "Damn it!" she muttered under her breath. Her boots crunched as she stepped around the damage. The horse swished its tail lazily, wholly unconcerned with their situation. Tamsyn wasn't so lucky. She had $3 left in her satchel, half a can of beans, and no appetite to linger. This wasn't her place. None of them were. She had been passing through towns and counties since spring, heading west, not so much chasing a dream as running from a past. She told herself she was looking for work, but really, she just needed to feel like she belonged nowhere. It was easier that way. A low whistle broke the silence. She turned. A lone rider approached from the ridge, his silhouette clear under the mid-morning sun. He wore a wide-brimmed hat, dust-covered boots, and the kind of calm that suggested nothing could shake him, not heat, not trouble, not even a stranger in the road. He slowed the horse as he neared. "You all right there, miss?" Tamsyn shaded her eyes. "Wagon's done." Axle snapped clean. The man dismounted in one smooth motion, his boots hitting the dirt with a solid thud. "Looks like it. You hurt?" "No," she said. "Just stuck." He crouched beside the wheel, examined the split wood. "You headed somewhere specific?" "Just west," she said. "No place in particular." He glanced up at her then, really looked. "So you're just passing through?" Tamsyn nodded. "That's right." He stood, brushed his hands off on his trousers, and gave her a quiet, steady look. "Then let me make this stop feel like home." She blinked. "What?" "My place is a few miles out. Got tools, spare lumber, and coffee. You can rest, fix your wagon, move on when you're ready. Name's Yates Prescott." She hesitated. Trust was hard-earned, and she had learned that men could be kind with their hands and cruel with their hearts. But something about his voice, unhurried, grounded, made her lungs ease just a little. "Tamsyn Johans," she said finally. Yates nodded once. "Well, Miss Johans, let's get you out of this sun." He helped her unhook the horse, loaded her satchel onto his own saddle, and offered her the reins. She rode while he walked beside her, leading the second horse, quiet between them except for the wind through the grass. It was late afternoon by the time they reached his land, a modest homestead tucked beneath cottonwoods, with a barn that leaned slightly but still stood strong. Chickens scattered as they approached. A brown dog barked once, then gave up and flopped in the shade. Tamsyn slid off the saddle, stretched sore muscles, and turned to him. "You live here alone?" Yates nodded. 10 years now. Built it with my brother. He passed. "I'm sorry." He gave a soft shrug. "You get used to the quiet. Come on, I'll show you the well." She followed him around back. The pump was new, the water cold. She drank deep, then sat on the porch steps while he brought out coffee and biscuits. Tamsyn watched the horizon. "This place is more than I expected." He looked at her. "You can stay a few days. No pressure. Just help with chores if you want. Or not." She glanced down at the mug in her hands. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," he said simply. That night, she slept in the spare room. The bed was clean, the window cracked open. She stared at the ceiling, listening to crickets and wondering why, for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like running. By morning, she had her sleeves rolled up and was helping Yates haul lumber from the barn. The broken axle would take a few days to replace, he said. She offered to cook in the meantime. He accepted. They fell into a rhythm, working in the mornings, sharing lunch on the porch, quiet moments that said more than words could. She learned he liked his eggs runny, his coffee black, and that he kept a journal tucked away in the drawer beside his bed. She never asked what was in it. On the third day, they repaired the axle together. She held the beam steady while he hammered the bolts in place. Their hands brushed once. She didn't pull away. "You've got calluses," he said. "I worked on a farm in Dakota for a time. You know your way around." "I know how to leave," she said quietly. He didn't answer at first. Then, "You do not always have to." She looked at him, really looked. His hands were steady, his eyes kind. He didn't press, didn't pry, just gave her space to breathe. That evening, after dinner, they sat on the porch. The sky was soft with twilight. Her horse was saddled. The wagon packed. Yates leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You planning on leaving tomorrow?" She nodded. At first light. He looked away, jaw flexing. "Safe travels, then." Tamsyn swallowed hard. "You've been kind." "I wanted to be," he said. "Still do." She stood, walked to the edge of the porch, arms crossed tight. "I never stay anywhere." "I know." She turned back to him, heart thudding. "But I never had anyone ask me to." Yates stood, walked to her slowly. His voice was low, sure. "Then let me ask. Stay." Her breath caught. "You do not even know me." "I know enough to want to," he said. "And I see how you breathe easier here." She stared up at him, eyes wide. "I do not know how to be still." "Then I will teach you," he said. "And you can teach me how to stop waiting for something to change." She stepped closer. His hand brushed hers light, asking. She curled her fingers around his. "I was just passing through," she said softly. "I know," he murmured. "Let me make this stop feel like home." Tamsyn closed the space between them and kissed him slow, steady, sure. And just like that, she stayed. Yates rose before the sun, as he always did, his boots thudding softly against the floorboards. He didn't wake her. He let her sleep. She hadn't said outright she was staying, but she hadn't readied the wagon again, and he took that for what it was, a beginning, not a promise, but something close. He stepped out into the quiet morning and fed the stock before the light broke over the ridge. The air still held the night's chill, and the dew on the grass wet his cuffs. By the time he walked back toward the house, the window in the spare room was open, and her silhouette moved against the gauzy curtain, slender, deliberate. She met him at the pump, hair braided down her back, sleeves rolled to the elbow. There was a stillness in her he hadn't noticed before, like her guard hadn't dropped, but shifted, less armor, more weight she'd decided to carry differently. "I'd like to try planting something," she said, without preamble. He blinked. "You mean a garden?" She nodded. "Not much, but beans maybe, squash, something that takes root." Yates leaned on the pump handle. "You planning on harvesting it too?" Her mouth curved, not into a smile but something quieter. "That depends." He didn't press. He just nodded once and said, "I've got seed in the barn. We'll need to turn the soil first." They worked side by side along the southern edge of the house, where the sun hit steady. She used the hoe with practiced hands, while he followed behind, breaking clumps with a spade. The earth was dry but willing, the kind of ground that didn't give easy but gave all the same. After a while, she paused, leaned on the handle and looked toward the hills. "You always wanted to be out here?" "I came for my brother," he said. "He had plans. I didn't back then. And now, I've come to like the quiet, the work that doesn't lie to you." She turned toward him. "You think I'm still running?" "I think you've got reasons," he said. "And I'm not asking for them." She didn't answer that, only kept working. By mid-morning, they'd carved out 2 long rows and scattered seed into the furrows. She knelt to press the dirt over them, her hands steady, thoughtful. When she looked up, her cheeks were smudged with soil, and he felt something shift in his chest, deep and simple. Later, She wrapped leftover cornmeal into a cloth and brought it out to where he was splitting fence rails. She handed him a piece without a word, then sat down on a stump nearby. "I haven't written to my sister in over a year," she said. He chewed slowly, waited. "She married a preacher in Kansas. 2 boys now. She wanted me to stay with them after." Tamsyn trailed off. "But I couldn't. She doesn't understand what silence can do to a person." He looked over at her, the wind tugging loose strands of her hair. "You want her to know where you are?" Tamsyn considered. "Maybe, after I figure out if I'm staying." "Take your time," he said. That evening, he poured water into the trough while she walked out from the house carrying a bundle wrapped in linen. "I found your journal." He stopped, turned toward her. "I didn't read it," she said, "but I moved it when I was dusting. I thought you should know." He stepped closer. "There's nothing in there I wouldn't let you see." She held his gaze. "Then why keep it hidden?" He took the bundle from her hands, set it on the porch rail, then said, "Because some things are easier to speak to a page. But I reckon it's time I learned how to speak them out loud." She shifted, arms crossed loosely. "I'd like that." The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the porch boards. He reached out, slow and clear, and took her hand. She didn't pull away. "I never asked you to stay because I thought I could change your mind," he said. "I asked because something in me already did." Tamsyn looked at him, eyes steady. "Maybe I never meant to stay. But you didn't ask me to be someone I'm not. I wouldn't know how." She stepped closer. "I think I want to build something here." He nodded. "Then we'll start with the garden." She leaned into him, her head against his shoulder, and for the first time, no part of her felt like leaving. The wind moved through the cottonwoods, and the stars began to show, one by one, as if the sky was remembering its shape. The hens had taken to laying beneath the lilac bush, and Tamsyn crouched carefully to collect the warm eggs, her apron folded into a makeshift cradle. The sky was overcast, low and wool-gray, with the scent of distant rain threading through the breeze. She had learned the rhythm of the place, not mastered it. Not yet, but her hands moved with a kind of quiet certainty now. Yates was mending the gate where the north pasture met the tree line. She could hear the rasp of his saw between short silences, the kind of focus one didn't interrupt unless necessary. She carried the eggs into the kitchen and set them gently in the crock near the stove. The house hadn't changed since she arrived, but the way she moved through it had. She no longer glanced toward the door like it might close behind her. Later, she found him in the pasture wiping his brow with the back of his wrist, shirt clinging to his back. He looked up when she approached, and his expression shifted, not surprised, not expectant, just open. "I saw a wagon about a mile off," she said, "coming up from the south trail. Slow going." He picked up his hat from the fence post and dusted it off before answering. "Could be the McCallans, they've got kin near Deer Lodge." She leaned her arms on the top rail. They waved. Looked like they were stopping in town. Yates adjusted the brim on his hat. "We'll be needing flour soon." She nodded. "I could ride in if you trust me with your horse." He didn't hesitate. "I do." That was all he said, but she felt it settle somewhere beneath her ribs, weightless and solid at once. She rode into Sleep River just after noon, the sky holding steady above, but the kind of steady that could break open without warning. She tied the horse outside the dry goods store and stepped through the door, the floorboards groaning underfoot. A man behind the counter glanced up, nodded once, and returned to tallying a list with a charcoal pencil. "Need flour," she said, "and salt. Coffee if you've got it." He handed her a cloth sack and gestured toward the bins. "Take what you need. You with the Prescott place." She paused. "I am." He gave a thoughtful sort of grunt. "Good man, that one. Doesn't say much." She filled the sack in silence. Outside, the The street was quiet but watchful. A woman across the way swept her stoop with short, tight strokes, eyes flicking up as Tamsyn passed. No one said anything, but she could feel their wondering. Folks in towns like this didn't like questions, but they noticed everything. Back at the homestead, Yates had finished the gate and was stacking wood near the barn. She handed him the sack, and he glanced inside before setting it down beside the door. "You see anyone you knew?" he asked. "No," she said. "But they saw me." He didn't press. Instead, he gestured toward the shed. "I've got something to show you." She followed him inside. The space was narrow, with a bench along the back wall and tools hung in careful rows. On the bench sat a small wooden box with a hinged lid, half sanded. He ran a hand along the edge. "I started this a while back," he said. "Meant it to hold seed packets, maybe letters. Didn't know who it'd be for." She stepped closer. "It's good work. I could finish it for you," he said, "if you had use for it." She touched the edge of the lid. "I would." They stood in the stillness, sawdust in the air, the smell of cedar rising from the fresh cuts. Outside, the wind shifted. That night, as she unbraided her hair beside the wash basin, he stepped into the doorway, hat in hand. "Do you miss anything?" he asked. She met his eyes in the mirror. "Sometimes I think I miss my old self. Then I remember she was always waiting to leave." He stepped closer, hands loose at his sides. "And now, I don't feel like I need to be anywhere else." He reached for her hand, slow and certain, and she let him take it. His fingers were rough, but his touch held carefulness, the kind that spoke of someone who had held grief too long and learned not to press too hard. "I won't ask for more than you're ready to give," he said. "I know," she whispered. "That's why I want to give it." He brushed his thumb across her knuckles. "Then let's build something that doesn't need running from." She turned, and they stood close in the quiet, the kind of closeness that didn't ask for more than presence. She rested her forehead against his chest, and he wrapped his arms around her, not to hold her in, but to let her feel what it meant to stay. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall, soft and steady on the roof. The rain stayed through morning, a steady hush on the rooftop that softened the world into something quieter. Tamsyn stood at the back window, mug warm in her hands, watching the garden rose darken under the water's slow gift. The earth would hold it well. That much she understood now. Yates was still in the barn, checking the gear that hung from pegs and nails like a row of old truths. She joined him, stepping over the threshold with boots damp to the ankle. He looked up, leaned his shoulder into the stall post, and waited. "I was thinking about building a coop," she said. "Something better than that crate they've been nesting under." He set the saddle blanket aside. "You know how to frame it?" "I've seen enough to try." He nodded. "We've got cedar boards stacked behind the shed. I'll help you haul them." They worked through the gray afternoon, hands busy, conversation easy. She measured while he marked the cuts. Their movements were different now, not hesitant, not cautious, but familiar. She asked for what she needed without apology. He gave it without pause. By dusk, the frame stood square against the side of the house, roof yet to be nailed. She stepped back, brush of sawdust clinging to her skirt hem, and looked at the lines they'd set. "It's not perfect," she said. "It's yours," Yates answered. She turned to him. "You want to come with me tomorrow? There's a woman in town who sells preserves. I was thinking of trading for some." He hesitated, not from reluctance, but consideration. "You sure you want folks seeing us together?" "I'm not hiding," she said. "Not anymore." His gaze held hers, and then he gave a single nod. "All right." They left before mid-morning, the sky clearing to a pale blue that stretched clean over the hills. The trail was soft from the rain, but passable. She rode with her hat pulled low, one hand resting easy on the saddle horn. He kept pace beside her, his horse moving with the steadiness of long use. Sleep River stirred with slow life as they arrived. A boy carried a bundle of firewood across the street. A woman swept grit from her porch in slow, circular strokes. This time, no one looked away when Tamsyn passed. No one whispered either. At the little house near the mill, the woman with the preserves greeted her with a tilt of the head. "You're the one from the Prescott place." Tamsyn met her eyes. "That's right. Well, I've got apple and blackberry if you've got something to trade." She offered a set of linen napkins she'd sewn from an old feed sack. The woman inspected the stitching, then gave a small, satisfied nod and handed over 2 jars. When they turned back toward the wagon, Yates touched her elbow. "You all right?" She glanced over her shoulder. "I think so. It's different seeing it from this side." They didn't speak again until they were out past the rise, the town tucked behind them. The trees rustled overhead, and the air smelled of dry field and wet bark. "You ever think about what comes next?" she asked. "I used to think about what I lost," he said. "Now I think about what I want to keep." She looked over at him, the reins slack in her hands. "And what's that?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "This, you, the things we haven't built yet." Her chest tightened not from fear, but from the sudden, quiet certainty of being seen without being pulled apart. That night, after the horses were rubbed down and the jars set on the shelf, she found him on the porch, boots off, eyes on the stars. She sat beside him, knees touching, and folded her hands in her lap. "I used to think moving on kept me safe," she said. "But it kept me lonely." Yates didn't speak. He just reached out and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers slow and sure, as if they had all the time in the world. "I don't want to go," she said. "You don't have to." She leaned her head against his shoulder, and the porch creaked beneath them, not from weight, but from the soft shifting of 2 people learning where they belonged. The wind moved through the cottonwoods, and for the first time, she didn't brace against it. She let it pass. The last frost came late that year, curling ice along the well handle one morning in early May. Tamsyn woke to the sound of the wind pushing low through the eaves, and the soft creak of floorboards outside the bedroom. She reached for her shawl, wrapped it around her shoulders, and stepped into the kitchen. Yates had the stove going, the room warm with the scent of damp cedar from the kindling. He was kneeling by the hearth, coaxing the embers with the same quiet focus he gave to everything. She walked over and touched his shoulder. "I dreamed about a place I lived when I was younger." Just for a moment, I could hear the river through the walls. He sat back on his heels, glancing up at her. "You miss it." "No," she said, "but I remember the sound." He stood and handed her a mug. They drank without talking for a while, listening to the kettle begin to hum. Later that morning, they rode out along the western edge of the property to check the fence line. The posts there had been sunk long before either of them stood on the land, but Yates had begun replacing them one at a time. She carried the wire strainer tucked beneath her coat, and he had a coil of new line looped across his saddlehorn. When they reached the spot where the fence dipped low, Tamsyn dismounted and crouched beside the loose wire. Her gloves were stiff from the cold, but her fingers worked steady. "You ever think you'd be doing this kind of thing?" Yates asked, tying one end of the wire to the post. "No," she said, "but I think I needed something that didn't change unless I changed it." He looked at her, brow furrowed. "And is that how it feels now?" She tightened the strainer, the wire pulling taut. "It feels like I know where I'll be tomorrow. That's new." They rode back at a slow pace, the sun climbing higher through the clouds. When they reached the barn, she paused just outside and said, "There's something I've been meaning to ask you." He swung down from the saddle, brushing straw from his cuff. Go ahead. That ledger you keep in the drawer beside the bed. I know it's not just a journal. I saw the column marks. Are you keeping accounts? He didn't answer right away. Then he nodded. My brother and I bought this land on a loan. I've been paying it down since he passed. She leaned against the doorframe. How much is left? Less than a year's worth if the harvests hold. I've got a little saved, she said. From before. If we're doing this together, I want to help. You already have, he said, voice low. But if you mean it, we'll go through the numbers tonight. That evening, they sat at the table, the ledger open between them. She ran her finger down the page, then set her folded bills beside it. The gesture wasn't grand, but it was honest. Yates looked at the money, then at her. You're certain? I am. He closed the ledger gently. Then it's ours now, not just mine. After supper, she opened the back door and stepped onto the porch. The stars were clear, scattered bright and sharp against the black sky. Yates joined her, wrapping a blanket around both their shoulders. I've been thinking, he said. There's a stone foundation out past the cottonwoods. My brother started it before he got sick. Said he'd build a real house on it. I saw it once, she said. Didn't know what it was. I'd like to finish it. With you. She looked over at him, her voice quiet. You mean for us to live there? I do. Not right away, but in time. She turned to him fully. Then I want to plant plum trees along the edge. Plum trees. My mother had them behind her house. The fruit would drop in August, and the bees would come so thick you could hear them from the porch. He smiled, the kind that didn't stretch wide but settled deep. Then we'll plant them. The next days passed in quiet labor. They cleared the old stones, stacked them with care. He cut timbers when the weather allowed, and she stitched new curtains for windows not yet framed. They worked without hurry, without doubt. As spring bled into early summer, the garden sprouted thick and stubborn. She tied up the squash vines one morning and found Yates watching her from the gate. I've never seen you still for this long, he said. I don't feel still, she replied. I feel rooted. He crossed to her, took her hand. Then let's make it official. She blinked. You mean? I do, he said. Not because I need to claim you, but because I want to stand beside you, name to name, every day that comes. She didn't answer with words. She reached for him and kissed him beneath the open sky, the soil clinging to her palms and the wind lifting her hair. They married under the cottonwoods 2 weeks later. No preacher, just the two of them and the land they tended. She wore a dress she'd sewn from muslin, plain but strong. He wore his Sunday shirt, sleeves rolled. They spoke vows in their own words, and when they finished, he pressed his forehead to hers and whispered, Home. Years passed. The house rose from stone and timber, windows wide and facing east. The plum trees took root, slow and sure. She wrote to her sister at last, and the letter that came back was gentle and full of questions. They answered together, sitting by lamplight, hands intertwined. They never left Sleep River. They didn't need to. The land was theirs and they belonged to it and to each other. On warm evenings, they sat on the porch as the crickets sang, her head resting on his shoulder, his thumb tracing soft circles against her wrist. No part of her longed to leave. No shadow lingered. She had arrived a stranger. She stayed a wife, a partner, a keeper of roots. And she was loved steadily, deeply, without end.